Hello lovely people, I'm K3N and welcome to week 33 of our slow stitch along for 2024. This week I want to look at the nature of cloth. I have no idea exactly what we're going to stitch, so I'm going to start with this little bundle, go through it, talk about the cloth, and we're just going to see where the journey takes us. I've filmed this little clip after I've made the rest of the video, but I'm going to put it in up near the beginning, so apologies if it seems out of sequence. I just went to check my messages and I had a message from Judy Martin, thanking me for sharing the video tour of her exhibition here last week and asking if she could link to it on her blog. And there's a lovely write-up now on her blog about her exhibition, and of course I said yes, so she's mentioned me there and put a link here. I just love all these connections between us makers, us creators. So thank you again, Judy. I'll put a link so you can go and have a look at that if you would like to. And now back to this week's video. So let's get started. What you will need is a little bundle of cloth. I can't really say much about how I chose this because that's going to be pretty much the whole video. But just a little bundle of all different kinds of cloth that speak to you in some way. I'm not obviously going to use all of this. I don't know if I'm going to use a bit of everything, probably not. But you know, a little bundle. And then I've got needle and thread. I've got my aught standing by, some basting thread because probably I'm going to do some invisible basting at one point, and the snippy fiskers. Thank you, Sue. Okay, so I'm just going to move all this to one side so I've got room for the cloth. For a minute, I'm going to have a sip of my tea. Excuse me. And let's untie the bundle. So on the top I've got a piece of Auntie Lily's pillowcase, which is a little embroidered piece off one end that's been rust printed, and I don't know what else has happened to it. My little bits of Auntie's pillowcase are getting less and less, so this is very precious, and that's probably why I chose it. I'm going to talk a little bit as well as I go along about the different kinds of cloth and the choices that I make when I'm selecting, because a lot of you asked after I shared the video about how I make bundles, you know, my bundles. And also I want to talk about choices in general. So we looked at choices way back when we tried to eliminate as many choices as possible. So this week we're going to make choices but examine why and how we're choosing, if that makes sense. So Auntie Lily's pillowcase I chose because it has special meaning for me and it's very precious, and the colour of it, the kind of cloth it is, all those other kinds of elements were not really relevant. It's purely because it's a piece of pillowcase that belonged to my Auntie Lily. It's very old, it's cotton of some kind. Going by the weave, there may have been something else in it as well. I don't think it was synthetic. I've never done a burn test on it or anything. I'll put a link, by the way, to a website which talks you through how to do a burn test. If you've got thrifted cloth and you don't know what the fibre is. But this is not going to really be about that. But anyway, I'll put a link anyway in case you want to check that out. So I've got Auntie Lily's pillowcase there. Sorry, I've got a really croaky voice this morning. This is another piece of thrifted cloth, which is a very similar kind of cloth to my Auntie Lily's pillowcase. And there's nothing personal to me about it. It was just in a job lot that I bought from a junk shop. I think it was the back of a cushion cover. I have the front as well, which was a kind of floral pattern. I don't have it here. But there was just something about this cloth that I loved because it's very old, it's very soft, and possibly, when I look at the weave of it, because of its resemblance to my Auntie Lily's pillowcase. I don't know. You see I'm stroking it. That's kind of, for me, is the stroke test. If a cloth invites me to stroke it, then I know it's a cloth I'm going to like working with. If I go back to when I was a normal quilter, using purchased commercial quilting cotton, The only choices you really make then, or one really makes then, is the colour of the cloth and the pattern on it. You know, it's very much about the surface of the cloth and what it looks like, especially when you're working by machine as I was. The feel of it doesn't really come into it. Maybe a little bit the thread count if you're doing free motion quilting. Maybe the thread count's important because the definition of the stitching and so on. But largely it's a visual choice. But now, you know, all the years I've been working with reclaimed cloth in a slow stitch way, many more senses come into play. The touch, the feel, even the smell. I mean, I smell cloth, not only if I'm buying it from a thrifted charity shop or something to see if it smells nice or not, or if I need to launder it, but different kinds of fibres to me have a different smell. I feel a bit like maybe I shouldn't be admitting that. Hopefully some of you in the comments will go, me too, as so often happens, and make me feel much better. The other reason I chose this, probably a practical reason, is that I don't know what I'm going to stitch, possibly some kind of collage. I'll need a foundation cloth, and this piece was big enough to do that. So that has come into my head as well, and that's why I've included this piece. The other thing I've talked about before often, before I commit to stitching on a cloth, you know, in any grate. So I'm just looking for a proper needle, a tulip. Hasn't got a knot, that's okay. So your needle doesn't have to have thread in it, could just be an empty needle. This is my favourite tulip needle that's slightly bent that I've been using for years. Tulip number 9, I think it is. Might be an 8, no, it's a 9. So with an empty needle, you can go as if you're going to take some stitches into the cloth. I can pull this through because I know there's no knot, and you can just, how does that feel to stitch? Is that nice to stitch? Is there any resistance? Does it leave great big holes? You know, high thread count often will leave a big hole that isn't then filled by the stitch, and I'm not a lover of the look of that. Would I be happy stitching on this cloth? Is it receptive to the stitch? Would I be happy, you know, spending many hours with this, putting stitches into it? Yes, I would in that case. So that to me, and if it passes the needle test and it's a thrifted cloth, often sometimes my larger pieces will, you know, go through the laundry, and then you might have other considerations. But if I can stitch it, I don't really mind what it's made of. It's nearly always natural fibres, just because that's what I like to handle and feel. But I've got some polycotton coming up later that I'll talk about. As long as I can stitch it, I'm happy to use it. So I put that needle back. And this little scrap is also some old sheet that went into the indigo, and it had 1 or 2 dips, so it's very pale blue. And it's very, I hope it shows up, I think it does. It's very coarse woven. It's an old French sheet, and it's cotton, and it's got a completely different texture to this cotton. But I know because I've used it a lot, although it's quite thick, it's really nice to stitch through. And I like the colour. I always love indigo. I use it a lot, but I like that pale colour, and I love the way it frays, these fluffy edges. I'm sorry for my voice. I'm going to have some more tea. This is a relaxed kind of morning. Relaxed Monday morning. I hope that's okay with everybody. Just a relaxed Monday morning and me wittering on about cloth. This little piece is some silk chiffon, and I used it in the onion skin dyeing video a little while ago, and it was a scarf that I bought from a charity shop, and I wear nearly constantly in my hair. There's the end of my hair. Look up if you're not looking. The bit that I eco-printed with the onion skins, I twine that into my hair. I just sort of, I don't know, I formed an attachment to it, so now it's permanently attached to me. And this is the other part of the scarf, or another part of the scarf that went into the onion skin dye bath. And it's silk chiffon, like I said, but can you see that the stitching along the edge hasn't taken the colour, That's because that thread is polyester. I mean, that's a sure sign that that thread's polyester because it hasn't taken the dye. But it's an interesting effect to the edge, you know, if you laid that onto something else, something darker, it adds another element. And the feel of it's nice, you know, it feels nice in the hands. I was pretty sure it was silk when I bought it. Now I've dyed it, I know it's silk. It's another test you could do if you're an eco-dyer. Dye a bit and see if it takes the dye. Polyester would not have taken onion skin dye like that. So that's some silk chiffon. And also I love the colour. This is also silk, but this is silk taffeta. And I haven't got any of the raw with me because this was new cloth. A friend of mine who used to have a fabric shop gave me various kinds of silk cream, you know, but new, and I've been using them over the years. And the silk taffeta, when it's new, is really stiff and kind of unpleasant, really, to me at least. You know, that's a subjective thing. But when I eco-dyed this, and that's a big rusty mark of something on it there, after it had been boiled for, you know, an hour and a half to be eco-printed, it goes lovely and soft. It frays enormously when you tear it, and it makes a big sound when you tear it. Shall I tear some just to show you? It tears differently across its warp and its weft. Most cloths do. In some, the difference is more pronounced than in others. In linen, often linen's resistant to tearing. One way it won't tear at all, and the other way it will tear with some difficulty. But if I tear this along this end, Mike, Glorious Mike, if you're there, I'm going to tear. Oh, that was a poet, and I don't know it. I'm tearing. And then I've hit the selvage, so that won't tear, so I have to snip. But do you see how it makes all these strings? How, you know, that come out of the weave, and the edge is slightly distorted. I use this a lot for cloth twine, and I kind of deliberately, when I'm eco-printing, dye some or print some very long thin pieces so that I can tear long lengths to use for cloth twine. And then when I'm twining, all those little threads can stay in and just get twisted into the twine, so they're not wasted in inverted commas. But I also know, a friend of mine had some cloth from me a few years ago, and there were little bundles I'd made for an exhibition wrapped around some spools, various bits of eco-print, and she was pulling these threads out and stitching with them. So that's something else you can do with those threads. And I want to do an exercise 1 week entirely dedicated to that. But you see it's quite strong. The silk generally has quite a high, what's called a tensile strength, so when you pull it, it's strong that way. It will wear, it will rub and wear, but as a fibre pulled along its length, it's strong. So you could put that in a needle and stitch with that. But yeah, and then so then when you get those strings off, at one point they will stop coming off. There, they're attached to the selvage. When you get all those strings off, you do get this nice fluffy edge, and that's something that's important to me as well because I work a lot raw edge. So I'll look at how a cloth tears and what kind of edge it leaves. And if it tears, if I have to cut it, I'm not a huge fan of the cut edge in collaged work. So there I might pick away at the edge and make it look like it has been torn. So that for me is another consideration. So we've had the look of it, you know, the colour, the look of the texture. If you compare that with that again, you know, the appearance of the texture is entirely different. How it tears, what kind of edge it leaves. Do you see all these decisions that you make? And these to me are lovely decisions that are part of the process, because in case you hadn't noticed, I like cloth quite a lot. And it's kind of getting to know the cloth, you know, getting to understand the cloths that you have, and not just thinking, oh, I need red, grab a bit of red cloth, as if it's, you know, just a tool to be used. No, it's something more than that to me. So that's silk taffeta. This is a scrap of linen from a skirt. This was the skirt that I cut up in the video where I showed you how to, how I cut clothes apart to use the cloth. So, and here you can see this side has been cut, but it was cut some time ago, you know, and it's been handled and so on. So now it's got this lovely edge. It's got this lovely rough edge that's a bit fluffy here and there. And here, I have torn it this way, I can see that. And you see the distortion there in the weave where I've torn it. Well, that could be kind of pulled back into true. Just play with it a little bit. And that little end there that's still caught in the fluff, I can just ease that out. Use the point of my scissors. And then I've got this nice little fluffy edge to use. But this side, conversely, this has been cut. Can you see that? And that to me is not as nice to look at. So then I would pick at that until I was down to one continuous thread coming away to give me the look of that fluffy edge that I like. And this linen, the skirt was very white, and I tea-dyed it to make it a more pleasing colour to me. I'm not keen on white. And the pattern on this side, this is quite nice, but some areas of it have got quite pinkish flowers on, which I don't particularly like in my work. They're too sort of standy-outy. But I often have been using the wrong side, where I used this in Backstory. If you remember Backstory Week, this was the cloth I used. The wrong side, the print's still there, but it's much quieter. So look at both sides of the cloth as well, you know, it's not just the right side, you can use it either way. Or you could use in your work this piece this way up, because you wanted the green, for example, and then somewhere else if you wanted a plainer area, you can use this side. So this little scrap of cloth is giving you two for the price of one. Oh, that's the bit I tore off there. That's the bit I tore off the taffeta. Sorry, I'll move them over a bit so they stay in frame. This is another piece of silk. This came out of my friend's scraps, and it's is it silk? Or is it polyester? No, it's definitely silk. Silk is crunchy when you crunch it. Again, if you're really not sure by the look and feel, you can look up how to do the burn test. But you see it crunches and it creases. And you'll get, if you can find some silk, something you know is silk and something you know is polyester, and really study them and look at them, you'll learn the differences. Silk has a sheen to it and it feels warm, polyester feels cold. And that was a lovely colour. It's almost the colour of clouds. So I was drawn to that, I chose that. And here's another piece of chiffon-y stuff. And if I crunch that, I haven't burnt any of it, but looking at the weave, it's very evenly woven. I think that's polyester. I'm not completely sure, but I think it is. But I don't really mind. I'm just going to put a needle through it. Examine the holes, which you probably can't see. Whatever it is, I'll use it because it's nice. It's, you know, it's a gentle, receptive little scrap of cloth. I don't really mind about its heritage. It's a nice colour, it's very sheer, so it would be lovely to lay over something else. This next one that's coming up, for example, if you said that colour's a bit bright, you lay that over, do you see it? It mutes that colour straight down. So you could use this piece in your work and put this over an area and leave some of it not covered. And you've got two different cloths again for the price of one. That was if you watch Judy Martin's exhibition on Friday, the video that I made, the red piece called Starry Starry Holy Holy. One side was really bright red and the other side was muted right down because she'd put some beige silk chiffon over the entire surface and then stitched it so it became part of the base cloth. But it changed the colour of it, as she says, just enough. So that's something, I mean, we did that a little bit, or we looked at that in the week when we looked at layers, but that's something to consider as well between, you know, you're not choosing all these cloths independent of each other, you're also imagining how they might play together. So that's another element to consider. We'll actually stitch something at one point this week. Or maybe not, maybe we'll just play with cloth. Why not? No, I'll stitch. We will stitch. These pieces again. Now, as someone who's not generally drawn to bright colours, I just love this pink. These are both dyed the same colour by my friend whose scraps they came from, probably with Procyon dye. They're certainly not a natural dye. And this is a little piece of cotton, what in the UK we call cotton muslin. I'm not sure that's the same in the US. It's that really, I think you call it cheesecloth. It's that really fine open weave cotton. And that's got a lovely fluffy edge. And there again you see the contrast between this lovely fluffy edge and this edge that's been cut. And I know that'll be nice to needle. And this here is a little scrap of wadding, or batting if you prefer, and it's cotton batting with a scrim. So you see this side is the cotton side. I've talked before about wadding having a right and wrong side. So the cotton or fluffy side goes up into the top of your quilt if you're making a quilt, because it's fluffy and it fills between the stitching and gives definition to your quilting stitches. And then the other side has a stabiliser layer called a scrim, which will be, it's not all wadding, some waddings are 100% natural fibres, but the scrim side is a polyester type synthetic. So if I turn that over, you can see there the clear difference. You see the scrim hasn't taken the dye at all. But this is a lovely colour. Again, knowing it's got polyester in it, I would needle it. That's the wrong needle, but it doesn't matter. Do you see? I can't get my needle through. Let's try a finer needle, because I do love the colour, so I might give it another chance. A finer needle's better. Yeah, so that would work, but only with this size 9 needle. I couldn't use thicker, well I could, but I wouldn't enjoy it. I couldn't use thick threads and a thick needle on it. I'd have to use a fine thread. So I might say, well, the colour of that is so wonderful, I will allow that, allow it, you know what I mean. I'll let myself go with that and use it, but just be aware that when I'm stitching on this piece, either it will be maybe a bit difficult and resistant, or I'll stitch it accordingly by using a finer thread and a finer needle. So that's those two. And I love that they're so different. Both cotton, with the addition of the polyester in that piece, but the same colour, so that's kind of unified them, although they still have their differences. So that's why I chose those. And this is a little piece of silk, again, that I just love. It came out of, I think it was a pair of trousers that really fell apart, those kind of harem pants that were made of silk of mine that I've had for years. And the whole trousers weren't like this, the trousers were pink, but this was lining the waistband, and so there was only a little strip. And I just chose that just because I love it, and it's silk. So, you know, again, we all have favourites of things. This is a piece of wool. This was new wool, but it was bought for me by a friend of mine from a place where they make cricket flannels. Cricket flannels are the trousers that people wear when they play cricket. So it's very fine wool, and it was offcuts from a factory that made clothes, you know, those kinds of clothing. And it was cream, and it was a very dear friend of mine gave me it as a gift, you know, a bigger piece than this. And I dyed it with buddleia flowers, buddleia, the butterfly bush. So that has connections to my friend who gave it to me. It's lovely wool. I love the colour, the gold from the buddleia. And it's, you know, it feels nice and soft, and it's a slightly thicker texture than a cotton, but it's not really thick as like some wools are. So it's just a really nice little cloth. This is some other indigo dyed silk with this pattern in it, woven into it. Whoops. And it's very thready, but it needles nicely. I can take teeny tiny stitches. It's got a lovely drape to it. You see how it hangs over my hand, and I like that it's got the blue here and the lighter blue here. It may well be a blend of some kind. I think the front is silk and it's on a polyester background. I think this pale is polyester, and that's why it's taken the colours differently. But even so, it's lovely to work with and stitch with, so I'm happy to use it. And also it was given to me by another friend of mine. This is a bit of very coarse linen, again that's been indigo dyed, and it had a patch on it of some other indigo dyed cloth, and I've cut the patch out, but I left the stitching in. So this cloth has already got some stitching on it, which I think if I use that in a collage, I just love the idea that there's existing stitching. So that's why I've chosen that. And again, the contrast between the fluffy edges and the cut edges. Now this piece of cloth, I don't like the colour. It's blue, but it's not the lovely soft indigo blue that I like. Even this, which is a darker, brighter blue, this has a different quality because it's organic indigo to this, which is synthetically dyed. This is shot polycotton because it's got blue threads going this way and white threads going this way. It's polycotton, like I said. It's okay to stitch. It's not too bad. But I feel resistance. I don't even really like the sound that the cotton makes when it goes through. It leaves quite sizable holes. So you're probably asking yourself, why is this piece in my bundle that I've chosen? This came from one of my dad's shirts. So that's why I forgive it all the other things, because of the association with my dad. So that's why I chose that piece. This is a piece of reproduction Dutch chintz. Again, it's quite a high thread count. It's got that glaze on it, you know, that glaze that is often on Dutch chintz and other cloths. It's pure cotton. It was very expensive. I bought it years ago in a shop in Amsterdam, new, called I'm going to say it funny, and Machtel, you can laugh at me if you like, Den Haan en Wagenmacher, as it's called. It's on the one of the main streets through Amsterdam. It's really hard to get even this fine tulip needle through, and it leaves quite a big hole. The colour's nice, I mean, and I'm there not in the paste where the print is. If you go in where the print is, it's even more resistant because it's paste printed. Do you see that? And then there's great big holes. Is that a Fred hair that's come over here with me? And it leaves great big holes in the cloth. Can you see the big holes? Even there where the paste isn't, there's big holes. It's not a cloth that I really like or like to use anymore, but I put it in here because it was the cloth at that time that I thought was just, I mean, it was not cheap. I think I bought like a fat quarter of a few different colours. It wasn't cheap, but it's just interesting to me how our tastes change. I mean, I was working then a lot by machine, but also hand quilting. And that cloth now I'm not keen on, and if I did use it at all, probably if I wash it, I don't think I've washed it yet, it will soften up, but if I used it at all I would probably use it wrong side up. So, you know, that's interesting. Here's another little scrap of something woven. I think it's cotton. Again, it's shot woven, so it's, and you see that clearly. Actually it's not shot woven, it has some blue threads going this way and orange, and then the other way there's some blue and orange. But it's just a really interesting weave. It's coarse, it's got a different feeling to it, to the surface, the roughness of it, and it's nice to stitch. So that's more about the texture of it than anything else. I'm not a huge fan of the orange. I haven't actually tried tea dyeing this, maybe I should. But in general, overall I like it, and I know I can dull that orange down. For example, if I put this in a piece, I can do lots of blue stitching over it, or maybe blue and a sort of more dirty orange, or, you know, a more muted orange. To mimic the weave, I could use the stitching to make the orange less bright. So this little cloth is telling me what I might do with it. It's not, it takes away that feeling of, oh, what can I make, you know? If you look and examine the cloth, maybe the cloth will tell you and give you a jumping off point at least. This little piece, if you watch me sorting through the scraps, you'll know that I found this cotton velvet in among them, and this is a little piece of that. And now again I say cotton velvet, and now I look at it under my light, oh, I think it is cotton. I think it is cotton. Needle test. Yeah, it's definitely cotton. So that's really nice to stitch, and it's velvet, so it's got that lovely texture. So just a little scrap of that would be... Now I've got a knot and I can't get my thread out. Well, I'm going to cut the tail off. It's not a knot, but... So this would add a lovely little element to something, just because it's velvet. I don't have a lot of velvet, so it has a kind of rarity value. So that's in the bundle. This piece, again, I like the colour. I don't know why I'm drawn to these hot pinks at the moment, but it's, again, from my friend who works by machine. It's really high thread count cotton. It's probably Egyptian cotton. And it's really, even this number 9 needle, it's really quite hard to get through it, and it leaves a big hole. So what I would say about this is I will use it because I love the colour and it's beautiful cloth, but I wouldn't use it somewhere where I'm going to do a lot of fancy stitching. I might use it as a lining for something, or, you know, somewhere where I just needed to make a seam around the edge and not do a lot of stitching on the body of it. So I'm going to set that to one side. It's not a reject, it's just not for this. My daughter always feels, if she makes a choice of something, she always feels sorry for the thing she doesn't choose, as if their feelings will be hurt, and she's always been like that. Maybe that's where, maybe she gets it from me. This is dyed again with onion skins. This is vintage Japanese kimono silk. You see, I've cut a piece out for something, and it's wonderful. If you could all feel this, you'd see what I mean when I say that silk feels warm. It's over my hand, it's just, yeah, that's the kind of silk that you could pull through a wedding ring. You know, they say about that test for silk that you can pull it through a wedding ring. And I love the colour because I love the, you know, the colours that I get from onion skins. And again, and this was given to me by a friend. I have such lovely friends, don't I? How often do I say this was given to me by a friend? I'm so lucky. So that makes it to the bundle, nearly to the bottom. This is some part of a tablecloth, I think it was. A tablecloth or a napkin, and this was dyed with madder that I let get slightly hotter than you would to get the red colour, so it's gone this sort of kind of bricky orangey colour, which I really like. It's damask, so it's got the, you know, the patterning within the weave, and it's got this lovely little drawn thread work along the edge, and then the border piece is also nice. So that's with vintage cloths or thrifted cloths, or, you know, repurposed cloths as well. It's not just one big flat piece of cloth that's all the same, like when, you know, when you buy cloth from a bolt. It has all these other little elements within it that you can use in your work. It's already got interest there, you know, this, and even this edge here, the little tiny hem along this edge. Although that's sewn by machine, that was sewn using cotton because it's taken the madder the same as the rest of the cloth. So that's a nice little piece of cloth. And this is again eco-printed with onion skins many years ago. At least 12 years ago, I think, because I remember where I was living when I printed this. And that's been out and used, and, you know, bits of it, and this is the bit I've got left. So it hasn't faded. And I just love all the different colours. I know that's just red onions and brown onions and some rust in the water. But this is a bit of old flannelette sheet. Well, and it's not that old, it was, you know, a modern sheet that wore in the middle. Actually, it was an under sheet, you know, that you, like a mattress protector. And it's really thick, but I know that it's really nice to stitch through. And if I wanted a, because I don't buy new wadding anymore, sheets like that make great substitutes for wadding because of the thickness, and you can double it up even. So if I put that double, then to me that now feels like, you know, like the Hobbs cotton wadding for hand stitching that I used to use. And then when I can stitch through 2 layers just as easily. So that's, I mean, it's not big enough now to be a bit of wadding in a quilt, but it's got a really lovely feeling to it. So what are we going to stitch now she's been wittering on for more than half an hour? Well, I'm just going to make a little collage, I think. And I'm just going to take a piece of this and have a sip of my tea first. Which is now stone cold, but that's okay. I haven't got my journal here, it's over there. I had to move my setup because for some reason my light was plugged in. It plugs in on a USB thing, you know, those things. For some reason it kept going off. I think I The connection wasn't great where it was plugged in before. I don't know what's happened. Anyway, so I just moved myself lock, stock and barrel over to the kitchen counter, and that's where I'm sitting. So I'm going to just get a piece of this tearing. It tears so beautifully as well. It's creased. Am I going to iron it, everybody all together? No. But you can if you want to. It's wonky shape, I don't mind. And now I'm just going to choose some pieces. I mean, we've done fabric collage before. I know you all know how to do fabric collage. But this was really to talk about cloth and not really that much about the project. So I might do this. And you know, can you even see what I'm doing? I might just grab pieces and put them out like this. Someone asked under the bundles video, how do you then use them? And I bet they get in a mess. Well, that depends on the person, I think. Mine don't get in a mess. I often just pick them up and look down the side of them and just pull ones out and then tuck them back under when I've cut off or torn off what I want. And other times I'll undo a bundle and get it out and choose what I want and put it back. You know, I'm not a very messy person, but that's, you know, it's just me. I'm not going to use this, I'm going to put that over there. I don't think I'm going to use my dad's shirt in this, just because the colour's wrong. So I'm eliminating to leave myself possibilities, so as not to overwhelm myself. I don't know, maybe a bit of blue. I seem to be going for these orangey browns. So maybe a little bit of blue in there. Obviously all this is not going to fit on there, and I'm probably going to edit again. So I've put this down here because I like this with this. I mean, this blue and orange are complementary colours, so this little piece. Now this little piece is almost a pet. I think I've got one other small piece of it. I don't think I want to use it here. So I'm putting it to one side. This is not nice to stitch, as I said, so I won't use that here. But this piece, maybe this colour. Yes, you see I like that there. That really, because although it's pink, these are quite close to it in colour, but then this is much brighter, so again it's lifting it. Do I then want some of this? I'm not sure I do, because I had paired that with that, but then you see as I bring that past the buddleia, this quite bright limey green, which is that same high thread count as that piece of pink, look when I lay it next to the buddleia. So although this is Procyon dyed high thread count, it's cotton, and I lay this next to the naturally dyed buddleia, let's do it that way around, I think they're lovely together. Look at that. Not only the colours, this makes the buddleia look more green than it looked without it. I don't know if that comes across. Here to me it looks yellow. I mean it's on the green side of the yellows, but when I put this on, which is more yellowy green, it makes this look yellowy green. And I really like that, and that's now making me think, although if I put that pink with it as well, oh look at that. See, I've now gone away from my muted that I started with, and I'm now liking that little combination. And there the orange doesn't fit anymore, I don't think, so I'm going to take that away and that away. I've still got this laying here. Do I need to mute anything? I don't think so. And then if I put this with it, look at this. It's picking out the colours in the onion skins, because in the onion skins I've got the greens, the sort of limey greens as well. So here's a little scenario coming together. So I can get rid of that. I can get rid of the brown. Well, the brown also goes, but we can't have everything in this tiny little scrap that we've got to work on. Auntie Lily's pillowcase also goes, but what about the black velvet? Now I'm singing the song in my head. Black velvet is a no, I don't think so. I'm liking this, but there are 4, and I don't like even numbers. It's not just a quirk. It comes from when I did garden design, when you plant odd numbers because it makes more pleasing shapes, and if the human eye sees even numbers it makes pairs of things and it's less interesting to look at, so that's why I go for odd numbers. That makes sense to anybody, or anybody cares. See, that definitely not. That will go because it's a neutral and it will go everywhere. So now what I'm looking for is a fifth, because I've got 4 and I want 5. So now I need a fifth. I need a fifth. What's it going to be? I'm keeping this as in reserve because it could be that, if there's nothing else. No, not the blue. What about this? No, I think this is the winner and not the blue. This is the winner. And I've got this little strip that I tore off to show you, so I'll just use a little strip. And you see it's pulled the weave up when I tore this little end piece and made these little ripples. And I was pulling it out there, but actually I think I'm going to leave them in because it's another texture. So here's my palette, and then I put the rest completely away, all the rest up, and I will put it back in a bundle later, or back into its bundles. And this is what I'm going to work with. So I'm just going to make a little collage onto this piece of cloth. With this selection I was going with the oranges and so on, and then this I pulled this cloth in, and as it went past that cloth I was paying attention, and that combination just spoke to me. So that's how I've gone from having that neutralish browns and oranges to this. It's paying attention, and that is just part of the slow stitch process. So now I have to lay them on here in some kind of pleasing way. I'm going to keep that the size it is for the moment. This has got an interesting shape because it's been cut out of something. I also, when I'm doing collages, try and mix up the horizontals and the verticals, and if you've got pieces with curves already in, that's great. Otherwise you can, you know, cut pieces into curves. I don't think I like that following that angle. I would prefer that to be straight, like that, and just leave that sticking out, and maybe I'll cover it, maybe I won't. I didn't needle this, did I? I think it is quite hard to stitch, but I love the colour so much I'm prepared to forgive it. It's not too bad. It leaves a bit of a hole, but... And some of this wool. See, I wouldn't want that like that, because then those two pieces are too much the same, and all your eye will do then is jump from one to the other, and not necessarily see anything else, unless you then put something like this across them, and then maybe that makes it more interesting. But I think this is killing that lovely colour contrast, so I won't put that there. What I'll do instead is make maybe more of a square shape with that up there. So I'll leave it, I won't cut it yet, till I'm sure. And I will need an overlap so that it doesn't pull apart when I stitch it. I don't think we've ever actually done collage as such, or maybe in Scrappy Hearts. I'm thinking of the cloth pouch video, which seems like a lifetime ago. The cloth pouch video is one of the first ones I made. And then I want some of this lovely onion skin flannel. And I'm also looking at values, so I've got here 2 darker colours and these are lighter. If you're not sure about values, because colour can confuse your values, you can take a photo on your phone, or, you know, if you've got a digital camera or whatever, and then put it into black and white, and then you'll clearly see where the darks and lights are. I do that as well often if I'm choosing wool for making, you know, Fair Isle or colourwork projects, things like that. I think I prefer this curve vertical to horizontal. It's looking a bit too much like a landscape, and that's not really the look I'm going for. I think I want that vertical, and I think I want it nearer to the pink. Or maybe I don't want the pink vertical. Maybe I want the pink horizontal. Yes, that's better. But I don't want it along the bottom. Excuse me while I play. I hope you've got scraps yourself, some of you, and you're playing as well. Right, and at one point I think, right, that's enough fiddling about, just cut some, because at one point the big pieces get too unwieldy, so I'm going to tear again some of that. I might use more of that, and if I use more of it I'd use 2 more pieces because of the 3 thing and not the 2 thing. Yeah, see now it's in its boundary. I might bring it in slightly so you can see some of that lovely undercloth. Now it's within its boundary, I'm much happier about it. If I tuck that under and just have a bit, yep, that's good. I'm going to go for that. Does it tear that way? No, it doesn't tear that way. So I'm going to have to cut it. So then when I'm cutting, if I really wanted to be finicky about it, I would try and cut along, following a thread, you know, one of the woven threads, more or less. So I'm on the straight of the grain, and then just pick a little bit at the edge until I get a fluffy edge. And if it's too neatly fluffy, what you can then do is just scrumple it a bit. And then over time and handling it will look nice and fluffy. But that's okay for now. So I'm going to tuck that under there. And then maybe I want some of this wool vertical. Cut it that way. See, I'm cutting that way so as not to cut too much from my scrap, so I think about the way I'm cutting. Tuck that under maybe, maybe baby. That's a lot of the wool, but I think that's what I want. And this won't tear, so I have to cut. And I've got more of this wool. That was a great big piece. So I don't need to start being precious about it yet. I mean, you know, I'm not saying you can waste it, or I'm not saying I want to waste it, but when I'm down to the last precious scrap, like that bit of blue silk, it really has to tell me that that's the only bit of cloth that will do in a project, and then I'll use it. Now I've got some of this to go in. Now all those are plain. There's a bit of patterning. Sorry about the motorbike. There's a bit of patterning in this, but I want some pattern. So I want to take some pattern from this, a patterned area of this. I think I want something from there. I love that fluffy edge. So I'm going to tear it somewhere here, I think. And that tears nicely, but then when you come to the end it starts pulling the threads out from the other way. But that's not patterned enough for this, but I tore it bigger so I've got a nice scrap of this piece that I like, that I can use somewhere else, rather than just, you know, trimming a little tiny end off that might not be as useful. So I think I'm going to have about that much. That comes slightly further over, and I might trim a bit more off the wall. And because I do a lot of collage and so on, I'm not worried about tearing things up small and not using them, because I know they'll get used somewhere, someday, somehow, some way. Oh, poetry going on here this morning. Just tear off a bit of, pull off a little bit of the threads to get a nice fluff. And I think I want that. I don't want that like that. I'm going to pull that up a bit, I think. That like that. You see, everything can change. That like that. That like that. And then I need my bit of this. No, you see, I'm not happy with that now. I'm not happy with the colour of that. I'm going to go back maybe to that. Not sure. So I've put them away, but now I'm digging back in them again. Maybe this same bit of cloth, but maybe this darker bit here. I've made a right mess over there. I will tidy it up. The lady who said I must make a mess. Yeah, I like this darker piece. So I'm going to have that out of there, tearing again. And now this silk, the other way, the taffeta, is much harder to tear. And I have to kind of support it as I tear. I have to do it against me. And then it wants to tear the other way. No, it wants to, do you see, as I'm tearing, it's trying to tear that way. It doesn't want me to tear it that way. So I'm going to cut it. Dear Henry. So I'm down to that darker bit that I wanted. I'm not going to start picking at the edge because I know it will, oops, banged my quartz tin. Just plain, just plain. Yes, I think I like it down there. And now I have to cut it again because I'm going across the way it doesn't want to be torn. I'll lift it up so I don't cut my green mat. I can't decide whether I like that shape horizontal or vertical. I think I like it horizontal. And maybe that vertical, just some of that pink peeping out. Yes, that's it. That's it, folks. I've finally decided. Cut that off. I mean, if you want to leave all the bits hanging out the edge, of course you can. I'm just going to turn that pink because I want the fluffy edge going that way. That's better. And there we go. So that's my little collage for this week. So what I'm going to do now is put a few pins in it. Applique pins, of course. What other kind of pins are there? But if you've got these, they are handy for this. Because you've got teeny tiny bits and you need to pick it up to put your basting in. And big pins will bite you. So I'm just pinning somewhat where the overlaps are, just to hold it together so I can pick it up. And wave it around if I want to. I'm going to use up this bit of cotton that's already in here, I might as well. And do the invisible base. So if you haven't, am I in shot? If you haven't seen the invisible base before, I'm sure you have, but it's a tiny back stitch on the front and a big stitch on the back. And I'm going to go kind of around the edges, around the perimeter, and I'm going to go up and down the joins. And I might not go all the way around the perimeter, it's only really just to hold it together so I can get the pins out. So I don't like doing the fancy stitches with the pins in. But also there's something about the quality of this invisible base that I learnt this use of it from Jude Hill. That unites all the little scraps of cloth together and just gives you this one unified surface to work on. There I'm feeling a little bit of resistance from that lovely green, but I knew that. I'm going to go all the way along the edge of this piece and come back and do those other areas when I'm done. So I mean this week is not really about the stitching or the making the piece, because I think that is something that you all know how to do already. It was more about examining the cloth, looking at the cloth that you have yourself in your collection, and thinking about, when you're making choices, thinking about all the things, not just the colour of it or the pattern on it. And then further to that, further to the qualities of each individual cloth, how they'll work together with each other. And again, not only the colour, because in here I've got some wool, I've got the cotton flannel, I've got the cotton muslin, I've got this higher thread count cotton, and this piece of silk. And I just think it gives much more character to the piece if you have access to, I mean, you know, we don't all have access to all these different things, I know. Or some of us are still building up our collections. But when you're selecting cloth, you know, if you're going around charity shops or thrift shops or yard sales or members of your family's wardrobes when they're out, evil chuckle, that's another thing to bear in mind. Don't just be drawn by the colour. Pay attention to the other things as well. I think I'm going to turn and come down this way because that's starting to bubble up. And use up this little bit of cotton. I was so pleased with the reaction to Judy Martin's work last week. I mean, you know, what's not to love? But I absolutely, she's one of my favourite textile artists. And it was so wonderful to have the opportunity to share that, well, to see it myself in person, to see her work in person myself. And I pulled that through. What I do in that case is I go to the back and I pull it through to the back and I cut it off because it's only basting. And I'm not fiddling about trying to thread that through just to make a knot. Because I don't want to. And you can't make me. I'm going to get a new bit. Yes, I was so grateful to her that she allowed me to record, to video and to share it with you all. And I'm so pleased that you liked it. There was one comment in particular that I've heard before very occasionally, and it's a comment that I just love, which was, I didn't know quilts could be like this. And I think it was from someone who was fairly new here. And yeah, just that phrase, I didn't know quilts could be like this. I love hearing that phrase from people. I've had it sometimes said by husbands of people who have come to my exhibitions. And for me it's all wrapped up with that, you know, seeing textiles as an art form, an art medium, rather than as, you know, merely useful things. Nothing wrong with useful things, I'm not saying there is, but I'm sure you all know what I mean. And I can already feel that textures and the structure of this little assemblage changing when I put this stitching in. So, it's nearly an hour and I've only just started sewing. Oh dear, never mind. I will be in England for a little while, some little while, because two friends of mine actually, have got an exhibition coming up, opening on the 17th of August. When I've finished basting this, I've got their poster over there to show you. Where am I going now? I'll go that way. Those of you that are in the UK and can, you know, get to, it's in Somerset. And I'm so much looking forward to it. It's my friend Cara Chambers, no relation, although many people often think we are, because not only are we both called Chambers, but our first names both begin with K. Her work, and another friend of mine called Angela Knapp. I'll show you the poster in a minute. And I've basted this, and is it basted everywhere? Sometimes you can't even see your invisible baste, which is hardly surprising, Catherine. The clue's in the name. So what you can do is get hold of it by its corner and wave it and see if anything flaps. No, nothing's flapping. So it's all basted. It's such a lovely soft, this backing cloth. I wish there'd been a great huge bit of it and not just a little cushion cover size bit, but maybe that makes it more precious. Okay, so that's my little assemblage. Now I've put it down the other way up to how I made it. That's another thing you can do, is turn your work around and see. I think I do prefer it the way I made it, but you can try all the ways when you come to put it in your journal or in your quilt or your wall hanging or whatever it is you're making. You know, maybe another way is more pleasing to you. I'll just get the poster, which is just over there, because I moved. I like this. I printed it out. Oops, sorry about the creaky stool. I printed it out in matte so that hopefully it doesn't shine. So I'll put it there on the screen. Can you see it all? It's called Hanging by a Thread. Oh, look up, I'm showing you something. A lady called Anne in the Facebook group found on a road somewhere were painted the words "look up," and she shared a photo in the group. It's hilarious. Anyway, Hanging by a Thread, Angela Knapp and Cara Chambers, and it's from, I'll leave it here and start waving it around in case you want to pause your screen and write it down or screenshot or whatever. It's from the 17th of August until the 28th of September, Tuesdays 11 till 5, Wednesday to Saturday 10 till 5. It's closed on Sunday and Monday, okay? So it's only open Tuesday to Saturday. I'll put a link to the Ace Arts website, which is the venue, the Ace Arts Gallery, and I'll put Cara and Angela's Instagram accounts, also links to those in the description, so you can check them out. So this is the address of the gallery. It's in Somerton in Somerset. And I'll just read you what it says here on the poster. I will have to tilt it because I can't read it otherwise. Angela's work focuses on birds, once common in her lifetime, which are now facing drastic declines and an uncertain future. The artwork is inspired by the meticulous records of local birdwatcher John McGough, I'm not sure how you pronounce it, beginning in the 1940s. Using paint, fabric, hand and machine stitch, the artwork aims to illustrate the beauty of these once common birds and how their lives and future are now hang by a thread. If you look here, you see the puffin. This was one of Angela's pieces. And I've known Angela for many years, and her work is just amazing. She used to work mostly by machine, if not entirely by machine, and she's quite recently gone over to using a lot more hand stitch. And yeah, I just love it. I call her the bird woman. She is the bird woman, and she's wonderful. And then Cara, it says, Cara also employs hand stitch as a vehicle. She states, as I stitch, I am held by the thread. My creativity is a vessel for all of life's joys and sorrows. The simple act of hand sewing slows the world, deepening my understanding and appreciation of nature, and provides insights into my internal processes. And these are some of Cara's gorgeous little nests, which I saw last time I was here, a few of them in real life. And they use cloth twine, woven, and then natural materials. Around this one you see are actual little feathers of birds. So this was a lovely fit between Angela and Cara. Cara also has some art dresses that she's made that tell a very personal story as well. So if you can get to Somerton, in Somerset, I would highly, highly recommend it. It's on until, it's on for quite a long time, mid-August till the end of September. So you've got plenty of time to get yourself there if you can. I'm not sure yet whether I'll be able to share. I haven't asked them or the gallery. If I can, I will, of course, share a video of the exhibition, but I can't make any promises, like I said, because I haven't checked. So that's coming up, and I'm staying for that. At least. Okay, back to this week's piece. So, I'm going to go and do some stitching on it now. I'm going to go and do that off camera. I hope you all can understand why I need to do that. Sorry, I'm not being very coherent today. I'm a bit, all over the place. I'm just going to go and do some of my classic K3N boring lines up and down in both directions, I think. I might stitch a circle on it or something like that, and then I'll come back and show you what I've done, and we'll put it in the journal. Okay, so I've done probably a couple of hours of stitching on this little piece. The first thing I did was make a circle, and I used one of my little templates cut out of an old envelope and pinned it on, and just did some running stitch around in red here, and in here it's a pinky red. I kind of matched it to this. Everything came out of my oats tin, you know, my Vimto oats tin. And then I whipped it with some dark green, it's a kind of like a pearl cotton, but it's actually some Indian cotton. My friend gave me some, she's got a big box full from her travels in India. So to do a whipped running stitch, you come through next to a stitch, and then you don't go through the cloth anymore, you weave the cotton under each stitch from the same direction until you get back to the beginning, and then you shoot back down through again to finish off. So it's a nice way to use thick threads that aren't very nice to stitch with. I mean, this is quite nice to stitch with actually, but it's just a bit thicker on the surface of the cloth. I call that a Marion stitch because Marion on Marion's World likes doing likes whipping. She'll whip any stitch basically, I think, but a whip running stitch especially. And then I use some of that same pinky red just to stitch 2 lines up here, which draws the eye and kind of emphasises the pink of this piece and takes it up, you know, into the green and down into the green. And then I did the same here with some other green coming across. I didn't have this exact limey green, it was as close as I could get. And after that I just used up all my neutral little bits. I did some crosses across this cut edge of this silk. I did some straight stitches across the edge of this pink, and I did a bit of seed stitch here just to change it up. And then outside I just literally did parallel stitches, roughly parallel, up and down. So I hope I haven't been waving that around too much, and you can see. I will show you the back story. There's the back. I jumped about, and you know, and it's now such a lovely textural little piece. And the other thing to say, perhaps the most important thing, bearing in mind the theme of the week, is that as I was stitching through each different kind of cloth, you know, I had cotton, flannel, wool, cotton gauze or muslin, silk taffeta, and this higher thread count cotton. So as I was making a line of stitches that went through several of the pieces, I was paying attention to how it felt to stitch through that cloth, how it felt when you had 2 cloths overlapping, and then how the stitch responded and how it looked. Here in the thicker wool you can see the little hills and valleys much more clearly than you can in this much more resistant high thread count cotton, because the softness of this cloth allowed the stitch to sink in, you know, and then it puffed up again in the same way that a wadding does when you quilt. But these cloths are much flatter and resistant, so they don't give you that same dimension in your stitching. I hope that makes sense. This cotton gauze, because it's such an open weave, the stitches really sank into it, and there were almost little puckers formed in between, which is also interesting. So when you stitch, and also look here where I did the running stitch, how this onion skin cloth responded. It made beautiful ripples. I just really enjoyed stitching here, and even here where it overlapped the wall and I was stitching through both. And then the seed stitch gave a different effect to the surface of the cloth because of the changes in direction of the stitching, and I think as well because when I do seed stitch I do stab stitch, or what we call chicken stitch, peck and scratch, you know, so in 2 movements, down and up again rather than like this. So just look at your different cloths, you know, if you've got different kinds of cloth, and how they feel to stitch, how they respond to the stitch, or whether it's enjoyable to you or not. You know, this is not really about this finished piece. You could do something entirely different to this. It's about the nature of the cloth. So I'm going to stitch this into my journal. I have left something attached to stitch it with. There's the couch piece. And just checking the date from last week because I can't seem to keep track of the dates. I think it's the 12th today. Excuse me. My pencil at the ready. I'm going to, where's my bit of, yes, I'll keep it the way up that I intended. Actually, my thread's in a bit the wrong place. I'm just going to do a little line of stitching up to the top just to get my thread in the right place. When I've done, I mean, you know, there's hardly room left, but sometimes I just keep stitching anyway because just feels nice. This is how I end up with these really heavily stitched pieces because I just can't stop stitching them. And that's where the joy lies for me, in little cloths that just want you to keep on stitching on them. Okay. I shared on my Ko-fi recently a little book that I made with my friend here in her way. She prints a lot with paints and mark making and so on onto cloth. And jelly plate printing, I can't even say it, let alone do it. So anyway, I was having a play with all her toys and I made this book and we did a slipknot binding. Or yeah, was that what it's called? Yeah, slipknot binding. I thought about that being a good, because it's single pages bound together. Lisbeth has a little video on her channel about it. Lisbeth Dane at Dragonkunst. And I think Jerry did one a few years ago, Jerry Bellini, but quite some time ago. Slipknot binding. But it's because you bind in single pages over a long string, it would be excellent, I think, for a stitch journal. It would be a completely different look, but you could literally create single pages. They have to be quite sturdy, that's the only thing, because you punch holes and bind through the holes, and there's quite a lot of pressure against the holes. It would probably be more useful if you had knew what I was talking about. But I'll try and remember to link Lisbeth's video below because that's where I learned how to do it. But I'm thinking for future, I might try it for future stitch journals, but it wouldn't be easy to stitch the piece on because the little book that I made, that I've shared on my Ko-fi, the pages are really stiff, sort of cardboard stiff. I mean, there are many layers of cloth and paper stuck together, but the pages have to have that much substance. So anyway, all that wittering to tell you that I thought of it for a stitch journal, maybe, and I just need to work on an idea. I mean, we've all got stitch journals, those of us that, you know, that are doing stitch journals anyway, but just for future reference. I just thought this would be a good way to add, because then you can just add each page as you've done it, as you go along. So you've got what I always like to have, which is the finished book as you build, but you know, rather than a load of loose signatures laying about, which is what I don't like personally. But it will be easy to, but you'd have to glue them on. So that is something I need to get my head around. Right. Now, do you know what? I think I might put a dangle, since I've got all those lovely beads over there. I haven't had a dangle for a while, I don't think. Excuse the creaky stool. On this tin, to find a smaller one. Excuse me, I haven't even had my cup of tea yet. I woke up early, as I have been doing lately, and I thought I'm going to show you this. It's a day later, by the way. It's a day later to when I filmed the first part. Not really in my usual routine. Let's just have that little silver one, I think. Come here. And I thought I'll come and do this before the traffic really gets going. It's a little silver one. Little pig. I think I'm going to have to... It's got quite a big hole in it, so I'm going to come through it twice and put it where I want it, and then I'll stitch it back up to the top again. My bit of thread's quite long. There we go. I have not got my... Oh, put it in my pouch. There we go. Let's get rid of the needle safely. So, I said it was the 12th. The 12th of the 8th, 24. K3N Kiss. And I'm going to write underneath the nature of cloth. There we go. So I hope you enjoyed that. I'm sorry I didn't do much stitching on camera, but there was so much talking and wittering. But yeah, looking at the cloths was in fact the most important thing this week. The finished piece is, of course it's important, you know. I always struggle really to describe this, but the most important thing is the process, always to me. But I mean the choosing of the cloths and the stitching of the cloths and paying attention to the cloths as you stitch, and how to put cloths together based on all the different criteria that cloth offer you. The feel of them, the touch of them, the way they respond to the needle, the way they work with each other, you know, all that, not just the colours and the patterns. So I hope you enjoyed it, and as always, thank you so much for watching, and I look forward to you joining me next time for more cloth tales. Bye bye.